Welcome back everyone. Today I will show you the whole painting and weathering of this capture Hetzer, the chawt tank in the 7-second scale. In the first or last video, I show you a quick review of this Vespid kit and its content, then I build it with a few modifications to match as much as possible to the period pictures. So in the end I had this grey plastic kit with a few metal parts in it. The painting was delayed by a series of rainy unfortunate events around here, but I finally completed the painting and here it is. From that grey plastic look, I firstly applied a black primer on the whole model, to check for imperfections on the surface and also to provide some guidance for the shadows on the corners and the lower parts. I used the Mr. Hobby Mr. Finish Surfacer 1500 black for this task. It's not exactly a primer, but it provides a good and smooth surface for 7-second scale kits. With that done, the first layer of paint consists of highly diluted Tamiya dark yellow. I didn't apply it too strongly, because it's just a first paint layer, which will make easier to find the highlights and shadows and also to see how the camouflage should be made. The camouflage pattern has 3 colors, the main dark yellow, blobs of dark green contoured by red-brown. This is different from the provided color profile, as I mentioned in the previous video. However, looking into the photos you can realize that not only the colors are inverted on the profiles, but the blobs and formats are also not corresponding to the pictures. At least there are a few pictures in different angles, so I use them as a guide to mark the dark green areas with a mechanic pencil. It got quite messy actually, because in some areas there are no photos in good definition or angles that gives an orientation on how the dark green blobs should be, only approximation or interpretation. So the front section, the case-made left front and the rear, I could find some good angles and clues. The rests, well, that I can't really say nothing definitive with the research I made. Well, back to the painting. I painted the base layer of Tamiya dark green to define the blobs, contours and pattern. The dilution is quite high, but I'm doing this way not specifically to get more color variation, but instead to don't get too much overspray, as I don't really have any patience for masking it. The result shows a lot of imperfection both on coverage and color division. But at this step I'm not really concerned with right now, because I retouched the whole model. First the dark yellow, which I mixed with buff to make it a bit lighter, and then the same with the dark green, only that I add some drops of Tamiya cockpit green. I eyeballed the mix, but maybe something around 2:1 ratio. When I was satisfied with the painting pattern, it was time for the most problematic color in this scheme, the contouring red-brown. It must be applied between the yellow and the green, but it is a tiny line, especially in this scale, so I should avoid the overspray here, for good. So I mix 1:1 ratio of Tamiya red-brown and whole red. Again, super diluted with roughly 90% alcohol and a low pressure in the airbrush. Don't ask me which pressure, because I regulate it in the airbrush. My compressor is always set on 20 psi. I managed to get a good line in almost all kit, but I also had some problems here and there, which demand some retouches again. Then a good coat of clear automotive varnish to seal everything and prepare to the decals and further weathering. The decals are super thin, so you must be careful while applying them. It's easy to fold them while taking them out of the carrier paper. It's impressive though that after they dry the film is almost invisible. However, I must point out here that the chawt decals are not quite correct. The shape is a bit off, and the lateral decals have the Balkenkreuz under the chawt symbol, which are inaccurate, but I fixed them by cutting the kreuz, leaving only the chawt symbol. Just a small heads up, after I finished the model, I was looking for some pictures of the Hetzer in the internet, not related to the chawt, and guess what? I found this right image showing the Balkenkreuz under the chawt symbol. However, on the left side picture, you can see the tank going out of the repair shop without the Balkenkreuz and what seems a fresh paint right under the chawt symbol, on the same side of the vehicle. So I guess both options are correct, depending on what moment you want to depict. Anyway, back to the video. After, I applied a coat of satin automotive varnish to seal the decals and provide a good surface for the weathering process. The first step was the chipping. made with a lighter shade of dark yellow, made of several Vallejo acrylics paint and a fine brush. This step is to make some scratches and chipping over the whole camouflage in areas that seems to be exposed, like corners, areas where the crew walk over the tank, grab the handles and so on. I also highlighted some bolts with this color. The next step was to fill some of these superficial scratches with a dark gray and brown mixture. By doing this, the depth and layer perception increases subtly. The exhaust was painted with light gray colors and later covered with ammo MIG streaking grime effects, which gives this user look. The same streaking grime effect was applied near the biggest chipping, here and there. It's probably not quite realistic, but adds some color variation, even being subtle for the eyes. The first layer of dust was airbrushed with a very diluted buff color, mainly applied on the lower hull. This serves as a guide for the oils further on. I laid some oil paint on a cardboard for it to suck most of the oil first, leaving basically the pigments, which will be easier to control and dries much faster. To increase the camouflage colors variation, I mixed a very light sandy yellow and light green and applied over the camouflage, rubbing it with a dry and clean brush. A pin wash was applied around the bolts, hinges and panel lines. This wash was a concoction of several oil paints, but the resultant color was a quite dark yellow, so it won't call the attention so much as a dark brown or black wash. I like this way better, but it's just a personal taste. And this is the resultant paint scheme after the pin wash and other oil paint effects. I liked it a lot, but it's a bit far from calling it done. Now for the real dust effects. Let's move again to the oil paints. Don't forget to lay the oil paints on a cardboard prior. It really is a key step to make the pigments more effective as dust. And also, don't forget to give a good satin or matte varnish coat before starting this process, because the pigments will stick better too. By doing this, the color will dry much faster, but it still can be reactivated by moisture brushing spirits. I used mixes of dark yellow, sepia, black, brown and yellow. I don't have ready to use oil paints with good colors, so I made some. Not that I prefer this way, I just didn't find or bought nice color stones. Anyway, I applied the effects firstly on the lower hull, then placed the wheels and tracks, which wasn't a really sight to see. Well, in today's video let's focus on the weathering effects. I could attach the wheels and tracks after weathering them, but I was a bit concerned that I couldn't achieve the same effect level if treated the parts apart. The process is pretty straightforward. Some color spots are applied here and there, and a clean and dry brush is used to spread the pigments over the surface, concentrating some of the dust effects on the corners or other areas that are subject to collect dust. On the sloped sides, I tried to make the effects running down, different from the roof, where I chose to make it as a collecting spot. Along with the paint, I use a fine brush moisture with spirits to clean the dust with a downward strokes on the sloped panels and with a small brush movements over the roof. Here you can see the comparison between the left side, which was already weathered, and the right side of the casement, which didn't receive any dust effect. As the effect is built slowly, you need to be careful to not overdo the effect depending on what you want. I liked a lot the resulting effect. Despite this process is quite laborious and time consuming, you have a lot of control over the effect. And also have some flexibility because you can, or kind of, Undo or correct some of errors with a clean and moisture brush. The tracks and side skirts receive the same weathering method, only that on the tracks I highlighted the edge with the silver Prismacolor pencil. The final step was to redo the pin wash, but this time with a more diluted wash, just to reinforce the fake shadows and picking some contours, but nothing too strong that can overshadow the dust effects. And this is it. Here's the 7-second scale Vespid captured Hetzer, the chawt tank, or at least my interpretation of it. This is the first time I made the weathering almost entirely in OPR method, and I really like it. You have a lot of control over the paint, much more than the airbrush or even acrylic paints with the brush. You must have a lot of patience though. Not that a lot of patience is something new to scale modeling, but you need to fight against the will to finish the model ASAP. The oil paints give you plenty time to work with, so you can sit back or take a walk to refresh your thoughts, and then return to your bench to work on the model until you are satisfied with the result. I still need to make the base, which should be a simplified one, and I hopefully can keep it on the schedule, even though there is a lot of things going crazy around here. So thanks for watching and your support, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done yet. Cheers!